Hello there. It's been a while. How are you? Sorry for any noise. As I move this, we get situated here. Okay. Hello, long time no see. Today I was traveling around Florida and I went to an estate sale. And at the estate sale, I purchased quite a few new books, mostly Franklin Press. Franklin Press has some beautiful cover work and, gold work on their publications. So I'm usually happy to see them at these kinds of places. And if the price is right, I'll pick them up. And today the price was right. Sometimes these estate sales think they're going to get, honestly, just basically retail price or close to it. And I'm not going to do that, but I will buy these books at estate sales for a decent price and bring them home and add them to my library. And yeah, today was a decent price, so I picked up about, I don't know, 30 books, some G.K. Chesterton and some classics. The Chesterton's not Franklin Press. In fact, it's a soft cover, but I just like Chesterton. One of the first and kind of maybe best apologists for conservatism, because he was sort of one of the least political apologists for conservatism, which is a funny way to think about that, but I think most of his views came from his religion. And I just think that they're a little bit stronger as a result of that. The highly politicized world tends to have a lot of risk and danger present in its proposed resolutions. Well, the topic of today's video was inspired by what I did next, and then the combination of mulling over the two activities. So after I purchased all of these great classics, I had a conversation with a fellow, and we were talking about how, him and his father were Freemasons, and that was interesting. And then he's talking about esoteric knowledge. And we kind of agreed that most political systems don't really have the answer. Um, and that's probably a feature of the reality that we live in rather than a bug. The political world is full of a lot of toxic ideas and behaviors and thought patterns. And rarely productive solutions. We're almost there. Anyway, after the discussions about the occult, the interesting items that he had around his house, and acquiring some great classic works of history written by some of the geniuses of history, I decided I was going to go to the Ringling family palace. You may be asking if you're not familiar. Like the Ringling Brothers, like the circus? And the answer is yes, the very same. They built a fantastic palace down in Sarasota, and it's actually kind of a museum experience now. And it is an absolutely beautiful building, and it's kind of stunning when you approach it to imagine that this belonged to a single family. It's basically a large courtyard and mosaics with zodiac signs on them, and easily 3 or 4 feet tall central, you know, I guess spire, but it's not a spire; it's a rectangle. So, and a coastal view of everything, including St. Pete, is I assume what I was seeing on the other side of the water, and just shockingly beautiful place. They built it in the 1930s, so I don't think that there was a whole lot going on down there at that time. The land was probably quite affordable back then. And it is very interesting to see a lot of the, I guess, kind of vacation resort feeling homes that were built there in that time frame. And I recently saw the Bok Tower constructed in the 1930s as well. So a lot of 1930s things were happening, a lot of speculative money at that time, a lot of big buildings being created, and beautiful resort style scenery, and would have been a fascinating time, especially given that it looked like the sky was the limit in those days because Henry Plant had put down the railroad, and he had built that big hotel in those days. And there was a lot of money coming into this area at really fast clip. And Ybor City wound up being the largest city in Florida at about that time in the 1930s. It would have looked like the land of opportunity if you were a, investing kind of individual with a lot of money. Well, Bok Tower is in an area which is largely uninhabited today still, and Ybor City is just a suburb of Tampa, which wound up surpassing Ybor City, and the coast of Sarasota is finally blossoming into a kind of attractive real estate market. And seeing these old buildings, these beautiful old buildings, it really put a sense of nostalgia into me, and a sense of, looking back into the past and seeing what people have done before me. And it's something that's become very present on my mind, which is that men used to aspire to be powerful and to build an empire. And you see the zodiac signs and the Greek mythological symbols in the Ringling home. You see the remnants of hundreds of cigar factories in Ybor City, a city founded by a Spaniard. You see the Bok Tower, dedicated to the American people by the government, built as sort of this monumental national park, and this aspirational history, which is almost like a whisper of the greatness that perhaps to some degree did manifest, but in other ways didn't fully come to fruition. And it made me think, is there any good reason why I'm not doing something like that? Is there any good reason why my friends aren't doing things like that? You know, do we lack the aspiration or do we lack the willpower? Do we lack the motivation or do we lack the discipline? Do we lack the drive or do we lack the ability? Or maybe both to some degree? Are we more humble than those who came before us? Or are we weak? These are the questions that were going through my mind today as I looked at these magical places and remembered that I've done quite a bit of this lately. It's a very good cigar. There's something like opening a book and reading something about opening up a book and reading the great works of the great minds of history. It does something to you when you do that. And when you do it frequently enough, over time it changes you. And so, the basic topic of today's video is weakness and strength. What is weakness and what is strength? That's the first goal of the night. We have to establish what those things are. Well, it may be useful to outline what strength would be. I think in the generic sense, we think of physical strength, being physically strong, being able to lift heavy things. People will also consider basically, emotional durability as strength, and the ability to simply take a lot of punishment is often viewed as strength. The ability to trudge through something and come out the other side alive so that you can provide for you and for yours. These are stereotypical um, desired traits in men. People like to see these things in men. They want to see a man who can self sacrifice, who can provide for his family, and who can take a beating and do it humbly and live nobly. I wonder if that's a little bit of an old stereotype, or maybe a new stereotype is a different way to think about it. So, if that were the case, then weakness would be selfishness or even self interest. And weakness would be, um, instead of sacrificing for others, it would be taking for yourself. And weakness would have a more self centric view and you wouldn't take a beating and you would be impatient with things like that and you would retaliate to people who you ostensibly shouldn't and things like that. You'd have less patience. That, I think, is what most people think of when they think of a weak man. They think of somebody who is habitually self interested and wasteful, impulsive, doesn't give to others, sort of a black hole of value. Everything just falls into them. There's an aspect of that that is truth. I think there is something weak about impulsivity. I'm actually going to propose that there might be an alternative dichotomy for strength and weakness, a different way to think about it. I would like to propose that the essence of masculinity, and we've touched on this in previous videos, the essence of masculinity And the essence of strength for men is a combination of intentional activation of freedom of will itself, let's say, and pure action. And at the crossroads between freedom of will and pure action, you have an actualization. You have a physical manifestation which occurs in the world of the will of the man. And I'm going to propose that men who cannot do this are weak. Men who fail to do this, men who never actualize, men who never bring their potential into reality are weak. Men who set a vision and don't follow through on it are weak. And men who set a vision and make it real are strong. And I think this is a more ancient way of being a man. This is a more ancient way of living up to your potential as a man. I have to say, for some reason, it almost feels taboo to strive for success unapologetically. But not just to strive for the success for the sake of it, but also for the fruits of it. To make a lot of money, like a lot of money, like extra money, like way more than you need. There's something taboo about that. There's something that people don't want to congratulate you on having that goal. Like if you told someone, I want to make $1 billion, they're going to be like, whoa, why? Or they're going to say, you really think you can? How do you think you're going to pull that off? They're not going to rally to support you on that goal. For the most part, people are either going to think you're delusional, arrogant, an asshole. Most people are going to put you in one of those kinds of categories. They're going to tell you to get a more realistic goal. This is a phenomenal cigar. Holy cow. It's a shame I like it so much because they're not cheap. Tons of black licorice, star anise, and fennel seed coming off this thing. That is amazing. Incredible. They're not necessarily going to encourage you to take on a goal like that. They're probably going to try to talk you out of it and encourage you to take on something a little more predictable. Find yourself a nice career, get yourself a nice girl, have a family, call it a day. What do you need with all that anyway? And I find that many people who do attain that level of um, accomplishment, they are not the type to show it off anymore because they know people don't want to hear about it and they don't want to see it. There's a fun fact. If you didn't know this, I'll tell you about this briefly. Um, Poverty rates. There is no correlation between poverty and crime, not actual poverty. All of the correlation between poverty and crime comes from relative poverty. And what that means is that if the guy who lives next door to you, this is like very roughly speaking, has way more than you, even if you have enough to live comfortably, it will still increase your likelihood of criminal activity. That's a very uncomfortable thing because we think that abject poverty is what causes people to commit crime, and it's not true. And so, because our rich people are so rich, and there's television and radio and internet, and people have so much visibility into the lives of the super wealthy, they're hiding now. They want to remain out of sight. Most of them would prefer that you never hear their name and you don't know they exist. Well, this was not so once upon a time. Once upon a time, the Ringling family would build a palace not far from a growing major city. And these kinds of places are phenomenally beautiful. And now they still do build palaces, but they do it inside of major gated communities in Beverly Hills and things like that. And they hope that nobody ever sees them and they pay for the privacy because they want to remain invisible. And I think people not seeing the super wealthy of today causes a disconnect. It causes people to be unaware that becoming super rich and super powerful is realistic if you know how to do it. If you figure out how to do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. You have to assess the needs of the day, the conditions of the time. You have to make a plan. You have to fulfill the need. You have to create value. You have to create use cases and scenarios where what you're working on will be received by the public, and people will understand immediately why they want what you have to offer or why what you're going to do is so valuable. But it all starts with the activation of freedom of will here in the world right now, not tomorrow, not next week, immediately, right now. I was talking to a nice young man recently who was struggling with an alcohol addiction, and he had a problem where even looking at it caused him to want to drink it. And I gave him advice that, you know, it doesn't sound like advice that would help somebody deal with this. But my advice was, hey, have you ever considered just simply not? Like, just don't do it. And he's like, yeah, but I don't know if I will. And I was like, exactly. The way you said that was predicated on your future self being better than the you today. And it never works that way. The future you is reliant on the past you to do good things for it because future you is going to have less energy. Your body's going to get weaker. Everything's going to go downhill. You may gain wisdom and that may make you more effective. You may gain discipline and that may make you more effective, but your physical condition is not going to increase unless you take major steps today. Your mind is not going to get stronger tomorrow unless you start working on it today. Unless you open up a book and read it. Unless you get to work. That's the point. You have to start working right now. And this young man had poured out they had a shot poured for him. It was a $70 shot. And he said, as soon as I finish this shot, I'll quit. I said, you're still doing it because you're thinking that today is all one moment, and that's not exactly right because the end of the shot is in the future still. So you still haven't actualized your freedom of will in the moment that you're in right now. And granted, you have a sunken cost fallacy that you just spent $70 on the shot that you can't get back. So you might as well get your money's worth. But Wouldn't it be better if today was the day that you quit alcohol? He looked at me and nodded. I said, "So what would you do if I pour the shot out?" And he just looked at me with this frustrated look. No, I took the shot and poured it in a glass. Done. And he stared at the glass that I poured it into, which had a bunch of water or something in it. He goes, "Damn, bro, that was real." And I said, "Yeah, you're in reality right now. And reality is happening in this very moment. And if you don't actualize your freedom of will now, you're definitely not going to come to any kind of fruition tomorrow, because tomorrow you is relying on today you." To use myself as an example, when I got sick a few months ago, it knocked me off the horse. And getting back on the horse was hard. And it's always been hard for me to get on the horse. I'm not a very disciplined person when it comes to pushing through things that I don't want to do. I've never been. And so I didn't feel like starting videos. In fact, instead, what I did was I spent a lot of time at local cigar lounges, talking to people, flirting with women, doing whatever I do at cigar lounges, and, hanging out with people and having a good time. But And I'm still doing that from time to time. But what occurred to me today is like, future me is not going to be happy with present day me if I keep doing that, because there's no fruit on that tree, there's no growth path. So instead, I went to an estate sale, bought a bunch of old books, went and checked out a palace of some formerly rich and wealthy people, and got to work. And I came home and I recorded this video. For me, beauty is very important. Beauty and aesthetics. I'm obsessed with beauty and aesthetics. And I'm becoming obsessed with actualization and manifesting one's potential in the material world, not just in your mind, not just achieving some kind of masturbatory self actualization or some kind of ideal that you aspire towards personally that you feel that no one else can see or touch. I don't see tons of value in that anymore. I think that's fool's gold. I think that reality, this physical plane, is where the rubber hits the road. And if you have a dream and you have a goal, you have a mission, and you want it to happen, if you want it to actualize, and you don't do anything to push yourself towards it, that's weakness. If someone tells you, "Hey, you got to go to college," and you say, "Okay, sure," and you don't go to college, that's not weakness. You shouldn't have agreed in the first place, but it's not your dream. It's not your goal. It's not your vision. Weakness is when you fail to actualize your vision, your goal, your dream, your future. Oh my God, this is a good cigar. Holy wow. Possibly the best cigar I've ever had. That is amazing. It's in the top five, that's for sure. So, strength is the actualization of your goals. Strength is the altering of material reality to mold to your will, to create something that never would have existed without you. That's real strength. That's the real core essence of masculinity. To change the world, to make it the way you want it to be. You can play somebody else's game. You can join somebody else's company. You can work for them. I'm not saying you have to be an independent entrepreneur and you have to be a CEO and all this other self-help bullshit guru stuff that you would see on the internet. That's not what I'm saying. If your goal is to have a wife and children, own your own home, and go to church and live according to God's tenets and his grace and have 5 children and just love every single one of them and love your community and donate money to your community, then manifest that in reality. Make that the reality. Do that. Be a career man. Be a family man. Be a father. That is a beautiful goal. What I'm saying is that the essence of masculinity means that you chose that and then you made it happen. That's what's masculine. It doesn't matter what the content of your choice is. Strength is following through on your word. Strength is being someone that people can trust because when you say something, it happens, right? That's strength. Strength isn't doing what other people expect you to do. Strength isn't folding every time someone has a new expectation of you. Strength isn't being somebody who can be bullied out of their pocketbook. That's not strength. That's not even moral. That's not even ethical. Now, if you feel compelled, if you have your bases covered and you have more than you need and you feel compelled to give to somebody, that's strength. Unless you don't. You feel compelled and you don't do it, then that's not strength. You see the through line here. The through line is the will and its activation in reality. That's strength. And my concern is that a lot of young men are not hearing this message. Nobody told me this, and I'm sure that no one's telling most young men this. What most men are being counseled as boys and adolescents is that they should be good people. But the problem is, as a man, it's hard to be a good person unless you're a strong person. A weak man, how can a weak man be a good man? How can a weak, unreliable, no follow through, thin as a sheet of paper, just folds at everything, how can he possibly be a good person? It's not a good person. That's a weak person, and he's folding and following the whims of everyone around him. You can't trust somebody like that. You can't expect anything of a person like that. And a lot of people expect men to be like that. They're shocked when men have standards and expectations. They can't believe that men would want something for themselves. They're appalled when they hear a man talking about just requiring things of others. Like, no, other people actually have to stop doing this when they're around me. People go, "What? That's not reasonable." Well, if it's his standard, if it's his will, and that's his requirement for those who are around him, he cannot fold because as soon as he folds, he's a weak, useless coward. And the problem is that even if you get this proposed man to fold, you're not going to respect him anymore because you know that his word is meaningless. And anytime he stands up to you, you can bully him off his word. And nobody wants someone like that around. They don't like people like that. Or at least they don't like men like that because a man like that isn't worth anything. How is a man supposed to protect and provide if he cannot even stand up for his own will? If he cannot even actualize his own will in the world, how is he supposed to protect and provide? He's not even doing the basics of changing his reality. How is he going to stop someone else from imposing their will? He's not going to. He's going to fold. And a person like that in a dangerous situation, you can't trust them. You know you can't trust them. And so, what we really should be encouraging is for men to be strong, aspire to be even powerful, and then request from that strong person a sense of ethics and duty from them. But it's a request because when you have a powerful, self actualized person, you cannot tell them what to do. They won't do it just because you want them to do it. You have to request it of them. You have to come to them politely and say, listen, I think it would be best if ABC. Because strength doesn't, it does not guarantee ethical outcomes. It really doesn't. Strength is not a moral position. It's more like horsepower in a car, right? If you need a car to go fast and it doesn't have enough horses and it's not designed to go fast, it cannot do it. And that can put you in situations that you don't want to be. And a man who has no strength, a weak man who cannot follow through on his will, he's like a car with he's like a car with no horsepower. He may not even be street legal. And so, really what I would encourage women to look for is a man with a lot of potential, a man with a lot of horsepower, a man who actualizes on his own ambitions and his own will, who looks for ways to make the world the way he desires it to be and the way that he requires it to be. Hey buddy, what's up? And then to negotiate with him and ask for him to be a moral actor and ask for him to consider her feelings and ask for him to do these things, because that displays respect. and you won't respect a man who you don't believe to be powerful. You won't respect a man who you believe to be weak. And given that men sort of require respect to feel um fulfilled in a relationship, I think it's probably even more important than for them to feel loved is to feel respected. Given that, it's not going to be good for a man when you go along with him and basically settle for like a weak guy who's nice, right? A weak guy who goes to work and spends all of his time, watching TV or playing video games or whatever he does. Like he's obsessed with, golf or basketball or whatever, football, and he plays fantasy football all day. It's like that's not really signaling reliability and strength. It's sort of signaling like impulse addiction, and impulse addiction is a form of weakness because impulse addiction means that your willpower is so low that you can't even spend your time doing something useful for your life. Even if you know it's useful, your impulses get the best of you even at that level. Same thing with like pornography addiction or alcoholism or a gambling addiction. Like any kind of addiction signals weakness and impulsivity in a man. Weakness and impulsivity. That's what addictions tell people about you. Because your willpower is so low that you cannot actualize beyond your impulses. Your impulses wind up controlling you, dragging you down paths that you know are bad for you, and you just don't change course and you just keep obeying your impulses like a slave. And obviously, that is not a position of strength. You cannot be a strong, powerful, actualized man if you're obeying your impulses and your addictions. So, if you feel weak, if you feel caught between the crosshairs of, the strength and weakness dichotomy, one viable first step is to stop doing the things that make you feel weak. Because as long as you're obeying your impulses and you have no self control and you have no discipline, you can't really actualize towards strength anyway. Now, I recommend you try to do both because sometimes uh, having a win can motivate you to stop having losses. Sometimes, if you've never had a win, you don't even know what it feels like. You don't even know why you should stop losing. And when I say win and loss, I mean the internal arena, the locus of your self control. You need to have wins on the disciplinary front, and you need to have less losses on the impulse control side. And when you start to nail that, it's never going to be perfect. You're always going to struggle with this through your whole life. But when you start to nail it, it's going to give you confidence and it's going to make you feel like I can do this. I can actually manifest my will in reality in a way that changes how I live, how I operate, how I speak, how I think. Then you're going to start sharpening your mind. Then you're going to start sharpening your body. You're going to start working out. You're going to start doing things that will make you more powerful. You're going to be a stronger man. And people will know if you're faking it. People will know immediately if you're faking it because your tree will bear no fruit. There won't be any outcome from your actions. That's the reason why no matter how much potential I've had, I'm talking about me now. No matter how much potential I've had over the course of my life, and I'm 36 years old, I didn't have any aspirations until I was maybe 25. Didn't have a single aspiration. So people kind of understood that I was lost. You don't use a word like weak for somebody like that, even if it would be fitting. They're lost. They don't know what they're supposed to do and they don't know why they're supposed to do it. Well, now it's abundantly apparent that I'm not lost anymore. I have a coherent philosophy, a very dialed in worldview. I know what I want to do. I have a mission ahead of me, and I just don't do it sometimes. And that's weakness. That is me actualizing weakness and not strength. And so this video is as much for me as it is for anyone else, but I know that there are a lot of people who will feel judged by the content of this video, and that's intentional because it's impossible to live without judgment. We've covered that before in other videos. This is a value proposition. It's better to be strong than weak. So when you are being weak, you are being judged by the value proposition that says it's better to be strong. It's that simple. So you are being judged. And if someone asked me if I was being judgmental, I would tell them yes. There's nothing wrong with being judgmental. In fact, you can't not do it. You will be judgmental. It's not a question of whether or not you will. Judgmentalism is a core aspect of your existence. You can't avoid it. And so I looked at these tremendous architectural works of art, the Bok Tower Gardens from the 20s and 30s, and the palace that I saw today on the coast of Sarasota, which was so magnificent and beautiful. Sorry for bumping the microphone. And the waterfront and everything about it. It was so magnificent. It was phenomenal. And I realized I'm really not working as hard as I should be. I'm just not. I'm never going to have a palace on the ocean at this rate. And as funny as it is to say, there's something in me that believes that every man should aspire to have a palace on the ocean front. I never thought of it that way before, but it's like somebody worked hard enough to get a palace on the ocean front. Why not me? Why can't I just decide that it's in my future to work that hard to get a palace on the ocean? It's not impossible. People have done it. And even if it doesn't work out to that extent, I could have a beautiful house on a lake or something like that one day. And I'm currently not in a position to have that, but it doesn't mean that one day I can't be. I love my life right now. I have a great life right now. I smoke cigars, I hang out with people in cool places, I talk to nice people. My community enjoys my presence, and so on and so forth. There's really nothing that I would change about my condition right now other than I would prefer to have a wife and children, and I don't. So, and I would also prefer to have buku bucks. I would rather have a lot of money, and I don't have a lot of money right now either. So, you know, I'm somebody who tends to observe things as they are and do my best to update my model to correctly integrate reality. And when I look around me, it seems to me that the lower hanging fruit, and it's crazy to say this because this has never been the case in history, but the lower hanging fruit would be abundant wealth. I think it would be far easier for me to get dumb rich than it would be to find a nice wife and have kids. And that's a mind blowing sentiment to me. It's kind of unbelievable that that's the case. But because I really believe that, well, I guess I should start working on getting dumb rich. So that's kind of where I'm headed right now. I'm going to try to make a lot of money. And what I'm hoping is that as a proxy of that, that these ideals and ideas themselves, which I find to be very important and very necessary, I hope I can also promulgate those and begin to disseminate them over time so that people can have access to what I believe was what changed my life and turned my life around for the better and started me on a path that I never would have gone down. And it wasn't an obvious path. It was certainly the road less taken, but everything has turned out well. And part of the reason everything is turning out well for me is because, and this has been true ever since I was a very, very young child. I'm talking like 2 years old. I just have an incredibly powerful force of will. I have an extremely strong force of will. My will is indomitable. It is impossible to break me. And it doesn't matter who I'm talking to, it doesn't matter how high the level of authority is, and it doesn't matter what game they want to play. My will is actually unbreakable. It is impossible to break my will. And many, many people have tried. And the only thing that happens is they get removed from my life, and I move on and I continue moving in the direction that I desire to move. I have never folded. I've never folded once in my life on things that are important to me. And I have no intentions of starting now. And if I could give myself credit for anything, that would be the main thing that I would give myself credit for is that you cannot bully me into anything. It is impossible. And you can only slow me down. In the long run, I'll find the way around it and I'll get where I need to go. And I will continue to move things in that direction. And I would encourage people to, if they don't have any of that in their personality, if they don't have any of that in their life, try to find at least some of it. I don't know that it's necessarily that great of a thing to be as intense about it as I am. It does cause a lot of issues. It makes compromise very difficult, and um it raises the stakes on things. When people challenge you on something, it raises the stakes. But ultimately, I think people would do well to have at least a little bit of it, for obvious reasons. I know people who have gone down entire paths in their life because of the opinions and ideas of others. And to me, that's amazing. Like I would never do that. I have never done that. And then when I talk to them, it's like, it's one of those times where I realize how different we all are. And some of them turn out with very good lives. They turn out as doctors or, whatever they were encouraged to do by their parents. They come out the other side doing it, and they can have very good lives. And oftentimes they're very thankful for the counsel of their parents and the counsel of their peers and so on and so forth. But that was never going to be a life for me. And I have no regrets about that. My path is just going to be different. It always was going to be different. But what I'm realizing as I go to these places where these historical sites, which are phenomenal in their majesty and their power, and the Ringling Palace and the unbelievable majesty there on the ocean front, and when I looked at the Bok Tower and when I looked at all of these different places, what I began to realize is that the owners of all of these places had something in common, which was that they manifested their will in reality. It wasn't the will of someone else, it was their will. All of these people manifested their will in the world, not somebody else's will. That to me was the key. It doesn't matter what other people want that much, because even if they want it, they're not really going to get it. They're not going to get a version of you that they want to get. They're going to get something else. That is true. And so, manifest your will, make the world the way you want it to be, and see what happens. You are going to become a formidable person. You're going to become a strong person. And it's amazing because you're going to be someone who starts saying no, who starts having standards and starts having expectations. And the thing that's going to shock you is that you're going to be afraid of disappointing people and annoying people, right? That's going to be the concern. It's like, oh my gosh, what are people going to do with this? And it is true that initially, the people who have become used to you being a weak pushover aren't going to like it. But what you're going to find as you keep doing it and you keep manifesting and you keep forging your will and you keep pushing forward on your terms, what you're going to find is that the net effect of it is that people start to respect you and people actually start to like you. And it feels different when people like you because of something that you chose to do. That's a different sensation. There's nothing like it in the world. When you do something that someone else told you to do, and then they congratulate you for it, you go, okay, I guess that was the right thing to do. Like, it's still, you don't feel like you're on solid ground, but you're like, okay, I got some confirmation, so maybe I should do it again. When you invent the pathway forward and people approve of it afterwards and they see the product of it and they go, I'm proud of who you're becoming and I love all these things that you're doing and that was such a cool thing that happened and thank you for this and thank you for that. And when you did this, it changed my life and all this stuff. It's like, oh my God. The kind of approval that strong, authentically strong, motivated men get when they actualize their will on the world and they begin to transform material reality to their will and people actually like it and they actually approve of it. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like that. Because what it is that they're approving of you. They're approving of the real you, the version of you that is authentically you, that is manifesting in the world. And they're telling you that this is an acceptable way to be strong and to be powerful, and people will actually like this if you keep going. And that is a authentic approval of who you really are. You're not you're not adopting a persona that people will tell you they like. You are choosing to display on full in a full like peacocking demonstration where you're showing your feathers, who you are and what you can do. And when people say, yes, do that, there's nothing like that. There's really nothing like that. And it puts you in a position where when people don't like it and people tell you to stop, you just smile in their face. And in the back of your mind, you go, fuck them. No one's going to make me stop. Now that I've started this, there's no way I'm going to stop because I'm moving in the direction I need to move. I'm doing the things that I need to do for me as a man. And the things that I believe would make the world a better place, I'm doing them. And what do they? What do they have? Because most people don't do things like that. Most men do not wake up in the morning and say, "How am I going to inflict my will upon the world today?" For the betterment of the world, right? Like not to make it a worse place, not to take anything from anyone, just to literally say, "I believe I can change the world in a positive direction today, and I'm going to make that happen." And boom, you go out and you do it. How many men do that? It's not that many. It's not that many. The majority of young men that I see today, they're obsessed with comic book heroes and comic book movies and Funko Pops and the lore of this television series and what would happen if this character from this universe fought this character from this universe, and did you play the new expansion of this video game, and all this crap that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to anyone at all. And I know that because as soon as the developers stop releasing updates, the majority of the base moves on to the next game. And there are some people who get stuck in that universe, and you could say that that universe mattered to them. But for the most part, it doesn't matter to most people. And they will replace whatever thing that they're stuck on with the new obsession as soon as it comes out. And what that tells me is that they are addicts. They are addicts who are chasing a dragon. It's a dopaminergic dragon, and they are weak. They are weak. If you have a dopaminergic addiction and you cannot get through a day without experiencing some kind of uh, dopaminergic release, as a man, that is a form of weakness. It means that you are subsuming all of your identity with something that is a total distraction. Now, am I saying you cannot ever participate in things like that? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Marvel and Capcom should not be your personality. That's simple. Lord of the Rings should not be your personality. Dungeons and Dragons should not be your personality. You should not get so caught up in any, fan fiction or any video game or anything that off centers you so much that you can't get through a day without thinking about it. Because those things ultimately don't matter. They are not primary drivers of meaning. Primary drivers of meaning include having a family, doing charity work, where you're in a community of people and you fundamentally change their lives for the better in a material way. And that's the key. There are material aspects to everything that actually matters. And the material aspect of Funko Pops is having a Funko Pop in your room. And the material aspect of Marvel vs. Capcom is going to a movie theater and then meeting with people and talking about Marvel vs. Capcom. This is not a primary meaning driver. If you don't have a family, you're probably not going to have a fundamental sense of meaning and purpose unless do volunteer work, join a church, join into some committee, some community. You gotta, and people will say, "Oh, well, Marvel vs. Capcom is a community." And it's like, well, fair enough, but that's not what I mean because you need to physically, materially change people's lives for the better. in order to tap into the primary meaning drivers. Um, and it could be a church, it could be charity, it could be, you know, nature, wildlife preservation, or having a garden is actually not bad. Having pets is decent. Like there are, I would say that those are at least secondary, probably more like tertiary meaning drivers, but like they're not bad. And there are all these different things you could do, but really you need to jump in with people and change people's lives in a fundamental and physical way for the better. And then you will have primary meaning drivers. And family is the best one. Having kids is the strongest. It's the ultimate meaning driver. But a lot of people are really kind of wasting their time with um, thought experiments and, you know, you could say philosophy, psychology, theology, etc. Like the endless rabbit holing, as I call it, of the modern era, where people will go down this rabbit hole. And usually this happens on YouTube. So this is just another version of what I've been talking about. When you get locked into the YouTube rabbit hole, the YouTube wormhole, and you end up down endless, just chasms of this video, and you're doing like the video ping pong where you just go back and forth, and your brain just gets scrambled after days and days and weeks and months and years of just fucking watching YouTube videos, bro. Like when I walk up to these magical, incredible works of art that people used to make, these architectural like just majestic structures, and we have a lot of them in the United States. We did a lot of you know work of art making, especially in the 20s and 30s in the Deco era. We had some phenomenal Art Deco buildings in this country. Uh, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, man, this was donated to the American people. This was donated to me by my government, or this was built and a person lived in this, and it was all because of all the accomplishments they had. And then I look at like silly fandoms that people spend all their time in, and they're arguing about which character would win. I was like, they're not real. Like those aren't real characters. It's a fictional universe. It's and these like Funko Pops are gonna sit on your counter, bro. Like, I don't care if they go up in value. Like that's cool. Like if they go up in value, you know what else goes up in value? A Roth IRA goes up in value. If you invested in a Roth IRA from your 20s, there's no way a Funko Pop is going to beat that. Anyway, I'm not trying to shame people from having hobbies. That's really not the point of this. I'm not trying to shame people from having interests. Um, and I'm not even like, there's some Pokemon cards that are worth a lot of money. There's that Beanie Baby that was worth a lot of money. Like some of this stuff is worth something sometimes, but on net, even if it's worth something, it's not usually a life-changing quantity of money that it's worth. And it's definitely not a primary meaning driver to like these things. And Disney movies and all this stuff, it's just like you'd be better off turning it off. You would be better off turning it off and finding out how to get into a primary meaning driver and activate the journey of your life and authenticity which occurs here in the physical world. Um, so, and you can't do that if you're a weak man. If you're a weak man, you can't do it. People won't respect you, they won't trust you. So, that's really the point of this entire conversation. I know I'm kind of rambling and repeating myself a little bit, but I'm still sort of formulating my premise here. Um, but I know what it is. It's that there's a weakness and a strength dichotomy, and the majority of young men have fallen onto the weakness dichotomy because they have not yet given themselves permission to try to be strong. Because they know that people are basically expecting them to be weak. And so they're sort of like tripling down on the weakness front so that, and then, when people kind of like call them out on it or have disdain for them, it wasn't their idea to be weak. It was like societal pressure for them to be weak. They were kind of expected to be weak from a young age. So it's not a judgment of them because they're basically doing what they were coaxed into doing and what they were pushed into doing. But my proposition to those young men is it would be better to be so strong that you can't be bullied. It would be better to be so formidable that no one can deny that they need to respect you. That would be better. And then you put yourself in a situation where when you speak, people listen. And when you have something to say, people go, gonna have to think about that. I'm gonna have to think about that because when that guy talks, there's something coming that you don't want to ignore. There's a little bit of weight behind his words. There's a little bit of authenticity because he's actually going to do things. He's actually going to change things. He's actually like the world will not be the same after he's gone, right? Like, and the world will not be the same while he's alive either because he's a mover and a shaker. He's going to make things happen right now. So, that's what I would encourage you towards is how can you actualize strength, things which fall on the side of the strength dichotomy, how can you begin to actualize them right now? How can you start to drag your life away from the weakness dichotomy and into the strength dichotomy? So how can you stop being weak, but how can you start being strong? It's like a stop and a start thing. You got to do both. You want to stop being weak and start being strong. And so, what that means is that when you have impulses which are going to take you over and cause you to do things that you know aren't good for you and cause you to waste your time in ways that you know is harmful to you and corrodes at the potential of your future and the potential that you could reach as a man. When you have those impulses, you say, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to pick up the bottle. I'm not going to smoke the weed. I'm not going to engage in lustful relationships. I'm not going to watch pornography. I'm not going to spend money on Funko Pops. I'm not going to buy another Marvel t-shirt. I'm not going to buy a new Dungeons and Dragons book. I'm not going to do all this stuff that's a total waste of my time and my potential. I am going to what? Because now that you've freed up all this time that you're not wasting on being weak and impulsive, now you're going to be forced with the reality that you have so many things you could do that are productive. You just have this plate. It's empty, but it's full of the things you should be doing, right? And you have to empty it first. So you have to stop being impulsive and being weak and being a coward, and you have to aim at the potentially full plate full of your strengths, and you have to start moving towards it. I mean, you don't have to do anything, but if you want to be strong, you do. You do have to do this if you want to be strong. And if you want to be someone who's trustworthy, reliable, dependable, somebody who everyone knows, like he's a cornerstone of this community. We can't be the way we are without him. If you want to be that person that everyone admires and looks up to and respects, you have to be strong. You cannot do that as a weak coward. It's impossible. You're imagine a well. It's a well, but it has no water in it. And the well is relying on the rain to come fill it up. That's not a very good well. That well has not been dug deep enough. That well doesn't have the foundation to be functional. And it's true that sometimes you may get water out of it, but it's relying on externals to be useful and to be valid. Well, that's what it's like when you're a weak man. A weak man is like a well that requires it to rain first. But if you want to be a functional well that has abundant utility to the community, you have to do the work to get so deeply rooted in your purpose that the water pours freely out of you because you have an abundance. You're so powerful that you can provide for multiple people and an entire community can rely on you for what it needs. It's the same thing for a man. You cannot do that unless you're strong. You need so much abundance. You have to be so self reliant and powerful and in tune with yourself and disciplined and not impulsive. You have to be so much of these things that it flows over, that you can barely contain the value that you're creating for people. And I can tell you just by looking around, we don't have a lot of people like that. And in fairness, I think it is the case that most men in history have been somewhere in the middle. There are times when they're weak and there are times when they're strong. And when people are extreme impulse, ridden addicts, like they don't get a lot of respect from anybody. And when people have like total impulse control and incredible discipline and they just move mountains frequently, it's almost kind of scary because it's like, oh my God, like this guy, nothing can stop him and he's going to be able to do whatever he wants. And so we admire people like that, but we also fear them. And I think that this is part of the reason why people are cautious to encourage men to become so powerful that nobody can stop them because they don't need anybody when they do. And we're a little bit afraid of that as people. But my argument is that you want to have as many people like that in your country as possible because it means that you are the locus of innovation. There's so much energy in your culture. There's so many people who move on to be incredibly powerful and why wouldn't you want more people like that around, even if it's kind of intimidating or scary or even annoying, even if they're a little bit hard to work with and to deal with, having them around, it's better because they make everyone's lives better because they're an abundant well. They're almost nuclear infinite source of energy and they create and they provide and you have a glimpse of abundance and you should want that. You should want to have that in your country. So um my suggestion to all the young men who are currently wasting their time on all the things that we've talked about, video games, comic book, lore, trinkets, silly hobbies, fantasy football, Dungeons and Dragons, movies, television, YouTube spiraling, anything that's just taking up all of your time and you're not actually doing or creating anything, you're not tapped into primary meaning drivers, is stop. That's the first step. Stop. And it might help you to go do some of the things that I described, to begin writing instead of reading, to begin filming instead of watching, just to begin doing the opposite side of whatever it is that you've been interested in. Just literally do the thing that you've been consuming instead. Go shoot basketball hoops instead of watching basketball games and do it with people so that you get into a community. And I will say that playing basketball's still not a primary meaning driver, but having community is better than not having community. Um, go outside, talk to people in person, engage in community, touch grass, and just start living in the actual world that you do physically occupy. Whether people want to admit that or not is a different discussion, but you are here with me physically in this world. Everyone who is alive right now, this is our group. And all of the people who have lived in history, they're not here with us. They've left their mark, at least the ones who are powerful, who had children and so on and so forth. They left their mark, but they're not here with us physically. And all the people who will live tomorrow, they're they're also not here with us yet either. So this is our group, everyone who's alive right now in this moment. We need to figure out how to get along and how to work together and how to make this thing as good as we can make it because we're stuck together floating through space on a giant rock. There is nothing else to do. We need to get along. We need to be productive together. We need to have community together. We need to spread love, and we need to judge each other from a place of compassion and judge each other in the sense that we should try to bring out the best things in all of us. And hopefully, somewhere along all of that, at least some people become rich and powerful enough to physically alter the world in a way that benefits everyone. And that is certainly my new goal for myself. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I want to make a shitload of money and I want to help people live better lives and I want to inspire people to do more than they're currently doing. And I do have a philosophy I would like to promulgate. I do have ideas about the way that the world works that I would like for people to hear. I have stories I want to write. I would like to become a published author. There's all these things that I want to do that I haven't done yet. And it is a weakness because I've had plenty of time to do it and I just have not done it. So, um I am participating in my judgment of others and of myself. I'm judging myself the same way that I'm judging everyone else. So it's a call to action for all of us. I need to stop being weak and I need to start being stronger. And what I'm hoping is that you will join me in that process and you don't have to share my goals. It doesn't matter to me at all that you share my goals, but I want you to choose goals and move towards them. And with that, I say cheers to all of my weakling, cowardly brothers like me who have been living our lives um, as less than we should. Cheers to that. And onwards towards strength, motivation, intelligence, actualization of your potential, and all of those beautiful things, which I hope we can all find and create here in a physical way on the world that we occupy. Um, Peace and blessings to you, my brothers. And I hope to see you accomplish great things. I hope that you all get your palace on the ocean side, just as I hope I get one. And with that, I will bid you good night and I will see you in the next one. Have a lovely night. Thank you so much. Bye bye.